The world is divided into 4 spheres, each sphere divided among continents and nations. Nations are divided by borders and interests. These interests divide the news. We examine the impact of these divisions on people and power. This is Imaginary Lines. Welcome to the program. I'm your host, Michael Fox. Brazil has been in the news lately, but not for its poverty reduction programs. President Dilma Rousseff is on shaky ground less than a year into her second term. Her approval rating is under 10%. Big marches have been called against her government from mid-August, and the head of the lower house of Congress is considering impeachment proceedings. But is this crisis real, or is it a fabrication of the corporate media and the right wing, which is looking to topple her government?
Não há espaço para aventuras antidemocráticas na América do Sul.
I'll speak with Brazilian political scientist Carlos Henrique Santana about the crisis and the media spin that's pushing to make things worse. But first, let's take a look at media in Latin America. The controversial NGO Human Rights Watch has released a report accusing the Ecuadorian justice system of deliberately delaying appeals in cases involving anti-government protesters. Members of Ecuador's judiciary have flatly rejected these claims.
El informe técnicamente es muy malo, deja mucho que desear, hace una confusión jurídica de muchos temas. No se puede hacer afirmaciones sin ningún sustento técnico y decir que en el Ecuador los jueces no aplican el principio de favorabilidad. La verdad es absolutamente decepcionante que una institución haga una afirmación de esa naturaleza.
For his part, President Rafael Correa has admitted his own criticism, stating that José Miguel Vivanco, director of Human Rights Watch's Americas Division, is in bed with Ecuador's political opposition. Correa is right to signal that this report is most likely full of political motives. In recent years, Human Rights Watch has earned a reputation of being hostile to progressive governments in Latin America. A number of dubious reports have been written by the organization, which have helped legitimize conservative political forces, many which have utilized violence in their demonstrations. Indeed, the timing of the release of this latest report coincides with right-wing protests in Ecuador. Some of these conservative forces are even openly calling for the ouster of the democratically elected government. It's evident that, true to form, this latest report by Human Rights Watch is more a polemic against the government than an objectively written document. Like in other countries in Latin America, it will be used to support the Ecuadorian opposition and to lay the groundwork to accuse the Ecuadorian government of what it considers rights violations in the future. Since coming to power in 2003, the Brazilian Workers' Party governments of Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and Dilma Rousseff have made massive social gains, reducing unemployment and poverty by half and more than tripling education and health spending. But things of late have not been good. The economy is faltering and inflation is on the rise. Leading members of the Workers' Party have been implicated in the Lava Jato scandal involving the country's state oil company Petrobras. In March, the right wing and upper classes led big marches against the Rousseff government. Now it appears that the more conservative sectors of Rousseff's ruling coalition are breaking off and joining forces with the far right. Among them is the conservative head of the lower house, Eduardo Cunha, who is considering moving forward with impeachment proceedings.
E eu, pessoalmente, a partir de hoje, me considero com rompimento pessoal com o governo.
And another right-wing march has been called for August 16th. Yes, things are not good, but how much of the political crisis is real and how much is manufactured? Carlos Henrique Santana is a Brazilian political scientist from Rio de Janeiro. Carlos, thank you so much for joining me on Imaginary Lines.
Okay, glad to be here.
Carlos, can you describe the present situation for me and explain what's going on?
I think we have one part of this crisis come from economic issues. Now we have some bad numbers about inflation, unemployment. In the other side, there is also ideological questions rising by media in Brazil. Brazil, probably, I don't know if your public knows, have one of the most concentrated conglomerates in the media in the world. Now, companies like Global, for example, control most than half of market. The money come from publicity and audience in Brazil. And at the same time, Brazilian media now rising a lot of ideological conservative issues. pushing forward a lot of very hard point in Congress, trying to keep society very in favor of this conservative agenda in Congress. So I think this is a very, very important point to understand if this crisis is not only an economic problem, but also ideological and fabricate issues.
Carlos, you just mentioned the mainstream media. What's the role that this media is playing, and particularly Veja and Global, in pushing the impeachment and trying to tie leaders of the PT to this scandal?
Okay, we have in all this scandal around Petrobras, is the Brazilian state oil company. We have a very real issue of corruption. There is no way to deny this. But at the same time, all this corruption is connected with all political systems, not only about PT, well, not only about Works Party. It's connected with all kind of party, the party as part of government and the opposition party. That's a very important issue. But the media cover all this scandal about only about the mistake committed by PT or other parties that be part of the government. In that sense, all this coverage about the name are connected with corruption, how they are connected, how they take bribery and so on, have a very biased, very bad coverage that produce in society that image that's good. This government is one of most corrupted, but it's not true.
Now, what's interesting here is that Eduardo Cunha and the PMDB are part of the ruling government coalition, right? They're allies with the PT. What's happening here? Are we seeing a breakdown between this ruling coalition between the PT and the PMDB? Sure.
He's a guy that was involved in several scandals since the Collor impeachment. So he's now president of Congress, pushing forward this conservative agenda associated with people come from evangelical or people from very conservative lawmakers now in Brazil. And as far as he can press the government to pushing forward the impeachment, the Brazilian media are giving support to him. In that sense, if Eduardo Cunha can accomplish this goal, so that's good for Brazilian media.
The cover of Veja this last week had an image of Lula with the title "His Turn," trying to make the insinuation that they were going to break news about the connection between Lula and these scandals. Can you talk about this cover, Veja itself, and the role it's playing in trying to really foment this crisis against the Dilma government, and particularly against Lula himself?
Yeah, I'd like to say that the main goal of media now is prevent Lula can reach 2019 or 2018 with a chance to be a very competitive candidate. The idea is create all kind of embarrassing situation to Lula to prevent this the threat situation where Lula can be next president of Dilma. So every kind of scandal, true or not, will be used by media to prevent this situation. Veja, it's one of large magazine in the world, but now in Brazil, Veja is a part of a broken, failed company. Grupo Abril is now facing a very financial trouble in Brazil, and they are trying to make all kind of pressure in order to prevent a complete bankruptcy.
You mentioned the low popularity. That's real, right? That's not manufactured by polls or other media.
No. That's real. That's real. It's lower than 10%, actually. Yeah, since Dilma was reelected in October last year, she is facing a very tough campaign against his government. So it's everyday scandal, true or false. And I think she committed some mistake in terms of political strategy to comprehend and facing this situation.
Well, Carlos, thank you so much for joining me on Imaginary Lines.
Okay, thank you. That was my pleasure, and I hope was helpful for Telesul. Thank you very much.
And now on to international media. In late July, the Turkish and US governments signed a deal which granted the latter permission to use Turkey's air bases to launch attacks against the Islamic State. Turkish President Erdogan in particular was praised by the media for dropping his earlier reluctance to militarily engage with ISIS. Some outlets, however, quietly acknowledged that Turkey would also use this policy shift to strike at the Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK. In recent weeks, this prediction has become reality. Airstrikes against the PKK and its stronghold in northern Iraq have led the group to confirm that any truce with the Turkish government was over. Reports are already emerging that fighting between the PKK and Turkish security forces have resumed, threatening to bring instability to Turkey. Many analysts suspect that the United States has quietly approved strikes against the Kurds in exchange for the use of Turkey's air bases, which have been used ostensibly to strike at the Islamic State. It is ironic, though, that the Kurdish resistance has been precisely one of the most effective forces in fighting against the Islamic State group. Once again, Washington's disingenuous Middle East policy will provoke political divisions and greater bloodshed, leading to calls for even further intervention in the region. And that's it for today's program. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Michael Fox. Please join me next week.